If you've ever felt your heart race watching Bitcoin pump, or your heart sink to your stomach when the charts turn red, then this video is for you. Welcome to Everyday Profits, where we talk mindset, abundance, wealth creation, and building the life of your dreams. Let's get into it. First, a quick disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor, and the content we share here is for educational, informational purposes only. It is based on our personal experiences and journey. Please always do your own research and seek professional advice before making any financial decisions. Hello, and welcome back to another Everyday Profits YouTube video and podcast. I'm so excited that you've chosen to listen to me, to join me, to watch me, and I can't wait to sort of talk about this topic that I'm very, very, very passionate about. So what I want to talk about today is about our emotions when we're in the midst of the cryptocurrency market. And to be quite honest, really, it's not just the crypto market thing, but that's how I've learned to handle my emotions is within the cryptocurrency market. And so you can take these little ideas that I'm going to share with you. You can take them and put them across every aspect of life, whether that be other markets or other investments or other businesses that you're in, even into personal, even into our personal life and other such things like that. And so what I really want to tap into today is just to share with you some different thoughts and different aspects and different ideas that I use in my own life that helps me get through, these very, very volatile times that we face when we become cryptocurrency investors specifically. And so we know that in crypto, in Bitcoin, in the cryptocurrency market specifically, we have these massive volatile swings. We can see swings of up by 10%, down by 30%, back up again. And it can be such a rocky road that we're trading on when we are cryptocurrency investors. Just take today, for example, the day that I'm recording this video. One of the cryptocurrency assets that we own has shot up by over 100% in just a few hours. And so it's a massive roller coaster ride. You feel like as though you're riding this massive wave up, and all of a sudden the wave's got to come back down and crash, and then you're riding it back down again, and then all of a sudden she goes back up again. And so it's quite the ride, so to speak. And what I want to talk about today is how do we manage the emotions? How do we get through? How do we push through that mental, how do we have that mental fortitude to punch through and not to let our emotions rule over our lives, so to speak? And even the other things that play on our emotions, the likes of social media hype, we see a lot of hype. You're like when I turn on my, when I look at my X feed, my Twitter feed in the morning, if there's been some sort of a euphoric event, the X feed will just be so hyped up. Everyone will be like they'll be saying stuff like, alt season is here, Bitcoin's going to crack all-time highs, we're going to $1 million, rah, all these things that aren't really realistic. And so we have to be so careful that when we're investing into crypto, that we don't get sucked into the hype, we don't get sucked into these emotional this emotional turmoil that wants to come when we become crypto investors. And of course, one of the biggest factors that I've learned that plays into managing our emotions in these sorts of markets is our experience. And I see it so often. People who lack experience and lack understanding in the volatility that comes when you invest in crypto, they're often the ones who panic and who sort of put their portfolios into catastrophic circumstances. They bring about catastrophic results on themselves because they don't have the emotional fortitude to push through the volatility and the whole ups and downs and riding their way, the whole roller coaster ride that cryptocurrency is. Okay, and so I really want to help you understand how I myself manage emotions. And so when I say we, I'm always talking about my husband and I. We're a team. We've got these significant cryptocurrency portfolios that we manage of our own. And so we've got three portfolios open as we speak at the time of recording this video. And we have seen massive volatility in those portfolios. And because we've got different investments in each portfolio has performed completely different to the others. And so we've seen pullbacks, we've seen our portfolios drop by, 60 plus percent throughout the year. And so we've seen, the value of our portfolios absolutely hit rock bottom. But ultimately, when we're going through these experiences, when you're just watching it just drop and drop and drop, and you can see, like all the crypto gurus, like all the YouTube hype, for example, and the other people, who want to see the crypto run, they're out there saying, no, this is it. We've hit the bottom. We're gonna be going north from here. And the next day you wake up and it's crashed even further. And you get in this mindset where you're thinking to yourself, what have I done? I've invested all this money into these cryptocurrency projects, and now they're sitting down at a 60% loss. What do I do? Do I sell? What do I do? But the thing that we have to remember is that we cannot be zoomed in on that moment. So what we need to do when we're in these massive tumultuous times, we need to zoom out. We need to get the bigger picture right. And if we zoom out on specifically a Bitcoin chart, you can see as it's gone through the cycles over the lifetime of Bitcoin, when it was sort of its first cycle was like 2014. And you can see it would have been this massive emotion would have been flowing in from the Bitcoin investors at that time. And you can see it was going up and down and up and down and up and down. And then as you zoom out and you look at the next cycle, what was happening in 2014 was just this little blip, a little blip on the chart. It meant absolutely nothing. And then you look at 2017, right? And it's these massive, massive ups and downs. And you can imagine the pullbacks, 20, 30, 40, 50% pullbacks. And you could see, you could understand that the investors at that time would have been just so torn up by, I've wasted all my money, I've lost my assets, I've lost my wealth. But ultimately, it still rose again, right? So after it has its pullbacks, it rises again. You zoom out, you look at the 2021 cycle. When you look back at 2014 and 2017, it's just these little humps. Like it means absolutely nothing. And then 2021, same story. 2021 was very, very tumultuous. 2021 actually had two tops, and so it was a massive dip in the middle, and everybody thought that the market had finished, but the market turned around and said, no, I'm not, and done another big run up. And you can imagine the emotions that would have been flying in amongst that, okay? But the thing to remember, as I'm trying to say, is to zoom out and to remember that what crypto is doing today is just today, right? Let's zoom out. Let's look at the bigger picture. Where can this cryptocurrency go? And of course, we've got to have personal discernment, right? We've got to have discretion. We've got to understand that we've got to be responsible. Is what I'm trying to think of. We've got to be responsible about investing into cryptocurrencies that are viable. So not these massive hype coins, not going onto Dex Screener and trying to follow those, the meme coin trend. Because when you do that, okay, that's when you will get wrecked, like big time. That's when you will get wrecked. That's when you become the collateral for somebody else. You become their profits, okay? But what we need to do, we need to be very, very specific and very, very diligent in what cryptocurrency projects we invest into. And they have to be something that aligns with our values and with our morals. And we've got to have the absolute, the deepest conviction that we can have to say that you have the absolute faith in the project that you're investing into. And so we always use Bitcoin because Bitcoin's the granddaddy overall, and Bitcoin has proved itself now to be technically a safe and secure cryptocurrency investment. That's sort of what it's known as. And so we all know that when you invest in Bitcoin, when you zoom out, you can see that Bitcoin is always on an upward trend overall. Yes, massive pullbacks in between, but overall it's an upward trend. And that's what we need to be focused on. We need to be focused on zooming out, and we need to be looking at the overall trend. Okay. And so that's what I really want to encourage you with, is that if you're in the midst of some market cycle, whether it be right now, just this week, at the time of recording this, just this week, we have seen pullbacks, massive pullbacks in the cryptocurrency market. There was blood in the streets everywhere. That's the saying that we use in crypto, blood in the streets. People were screaming out saying, this is the end. The bull market's done. What are we doing? We've lost our investments. But ultimately, it will turn around. And we have to have that deepest conviction about what we're doing and about what we're investing in, and where our heart lies, where our passion lies. We need to be convicted. All right. And so what I find for my own personal experience is that with Nat and I being what I would class as a brilliant investing team, as the couple that we are, we often rely on each other. So we're all human, right? We all have these emotions that want to come up, and we all have to understand how to process those emotions. But what we find as an investor couple is that usually when one of us is having like a depressed, a fearful moment, I've done the wrong thing moment, you're having these negative thoughts flowing through your head. Often the other one is on an upbound, and they're saying, no, like you need to zoom out. Like they're reassuring the other that it's all good, and things aren't, as they seem, and we just need to zoom back, and we need to have the patience, and we need to hold on to our conviction. And so I find that works really, really well for Nat and I, for my husband Nat and I, and for the team that we are. And so that's what I want to encourage you to, is to simply, I guess, peel back them layers. So if you're having thoughts in your head of, I've wasted my money, I've lost my investments, whatever that looks like for you, peel that back and say, well, why? Why am I thinking like this? Like, why is that bubbling up? Why is that there? Keep peeling the layers back and keep asking the question, why? Like, why? And if for example, if you say, I've wasted my money, it's an absolute waste of money what I've put into my cryptocurrency portfolio. Well, then you ask the question, well, why? Why am I thinking that? Oh, because I could have bought this instead. Well, why is that? Oh, it's because it could have been, because I should have bought Ethereum instead of Solana, for example. These are just hypotheticals. And so I really encourage you to keep digging why, and eventually you'll get down to your conviction. You will eventually go very, very deep within yourself, and you will find your own conviction for what you are investing in, for the reason why you are doing it. All right. And the other thing that I would highly encourage you to do is to write down your ambitions. So say if you have $1,000 invested into Bitcoin, we'll use Bitcoin because that's the overall cryptocurrency granddaddy. Okay, I've got $1,000 invested into Bitcoin. Where do I want that investment to be in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? How much am I going to add to that investment in 3 years' time? And really start to zoom that out and really start to see. So say, for example, if you invest $1,000 into Bitcoin today, and your only ambition is to have that doubled in 3 years' time. So in 3 years' time, it will be $2,000. Okay, so write these things down. By 2028, my Bitcoin investment will be $3,000. Start to really write that down, because what that does then, when you start to have these fears and these uncertainties and these doubts that want to rise up and eat you up, you can say, no, my ambition is this. My ambition is not to worry about what it's doing today. My ambition is to look to the long term and say, right, by this year, I want my cryptocurrency investments to be this amount. Okay, so I really want to encourage you to really, really zoom out and really understand that every market, everything in life has its cycles, whether that is investing into crypto, investing into stocks, investing into property, even just life in general. We all have cycles within our life. And it's just a case of riding that wave, all right? Riding that wave and being deeply, deeply convicted in what you are doing. So there's certain things that you do not want to be found doing. So if you're panicking, you do not want to race in and sell your assets. That is not something that you want to be doing, unless, of course, that there is, of course, some reasons why you will be doing this. If the project is definitely failing, for example, there is a time then to sell your assets and to recoup whatever money you can if a project is failing. Okay, that's the big if a project is failing. But if you're just fearful for the sake of the market dropping, so say Bitcoin pulls back by 20% and you're feeling this massive fear within yourself, Bitcoin will recover. Okay, there is no doubt about it. Bitcoin will always recover. Okay, and so this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, playing the long game, zooming out, understanding that this pullback is simply just a pullback. It will always rise again. And the thing to remember too is that we need to let the market do the heavy lifting for us. So what does that mean? That means that when we put our investments in, we just put it in and we leave it there. Okay, until it reaches the point where we want to pull it out, until it reaches our target, our goals, our ambitions. Okay, put it into the market and leave it there. Let the market do the heavy lifting. Don't waste your precious mental space and your time and your emotions worrying about what the cryptocurrency market is doing, because ultimately it gets us nowhere. Okay, we are known as retail investors. We are small fry in the overall cryptocurrency ecosystem, and we just have to have the faith in what we're investing in. And I guess you might be sitting there wondering, well, how do I have this faith? How do I have the conviction that I need in these investments? Well, it's all about doing your own research initially. It's not about racing out there and trying to capture every single pump on every single new cryptocurrency, because that's where the hype and the euphoria, and that's because what Grandma Betty down the road says you should be investing in. It's about doing your own research and really digging deep and being convicted in that certain project. So how do we do this? How do we become convicted in what we're investing into? Well, we listen to a lot of podcasts. We watch a lot of YouTube. I do a lot of research online. So, for example, there's lots of different research tools that you could use. The likes of CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap, they will give you ample amount of data that you need. So you can look in there and you can see how much money is flowing around through the system. You can get in there and you can see like what liquidity is there today. You can get in there and you can find the website links, the safe links that you need to then go and research the project further. Okay. So what I do, a lot of people come to me and say, "Hey, I've had this project introduced to me. Would you like to jump on board with me?" And I've always got alarm bells going off because we do not invest in anything that we don't understand. That's one of the most vital things we must remember when we become investors. And so the first thing that I'll do when it becomes to cryptocurrency and someone says, "I want, would you be interested in buying into this token?" And the first thing I go to is either CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap. Most of the time they're listed on CoinMarketCap. A lot of times speculative tokens aren't on CoinGecko. But you go to CoinMarketCap and you look it up, and you just look on there and you just say, okay, there's been a few where the liquidity is classed as being self-reported, and it's like $100,000. Well, you know full well that project at that point in time, this is not saying it's not going to rise to something great, down the track, but at this point in time, where does that project sit? And you know that if it's got very, very low liquidity, that there is no movement there. There is no long-term ambition that you can peg to that particular project. Okay. And so you have to be very, very diligent about doing your own research. Like how many tokens are in supply? How many unlocks are coming down the track? Like what airdrops are they going to bring in? How are they going to dilute the supply? How are they going to dilute the value of the tokens that are out? And so there's so much to look into that ultimately builds our conviction, and then that then gives us management over our emotions and how we manage the turmoils of what comes in cryptocurrency. It's all about, I guess, being convicted as to why you're in crypto, why you're in the projects that you're invested in, and where you want them to go. What is your ultimate conviction? And like for me, for example, what I do every morning, I sit down as I'm having breakfast and I write out my list of my goals and ambitions. Okay. And so what I've got going at the moment, because we're in a bull market, I've got that I want to make, I want my crypto portfolio to do this many X's by this date. And then when we take our profits out of that, we will buy this, and this with the profits from our cryptocurrency. And so I'm heavily convicted on what our cryptocurrency portfolio is going to do. I know what I want it to do. I know what my targets are. I know when we're going to be taking profits, because I know what we're going to use those funds to then move into, what we're going to do with them. We have a very solid plan about where we're going. Okay. And so I write down everything, like whether that be, things that we want to buy, material things, or whether that be more assets. So say, for example, you might want to buy more property, or you might want to buy more cryptocurrency, for example. You might want to take the profits out of your altcoins and put them back into Bitcoin and start building your Bitcoin portfolio. There are so many options out there, but it's simply about becoming clear on what they are for you and for your investment portfolio, and then moving that into action so then you can manage your own emotions. Okay. And so I really want to encourage you to sort of just to spend some time thinking about this, and to spend some time, I guess, doing mindset work, because we have to have our mind in the right place to handle the volatility. We have to have the mental fortitude. We have to have a fortress around our own mind to understand, and to let that conviction be part of our story. And we know it's so easy to be so heavily influenced by the noise that's around us. And you know what? The biggest noise that often impacts us is from people who don't know what they're talking about. So often you will hear it from Grandma Betty down the road, Jack is from over the creek. These people who perhaps have never ever invested into anything, and yet they've always the ones with the loudest voice. They've always got the best advice. They've always got the, I'm looking out for you attitude. But we have to be convicted within ourselves. We have to build a fortress around our mind. And fair enough, I'm not talking about burning bridges with other people, but I'm talking about protecting yourself, about having boundaries for yourself. If somebody's there telling you not to invest into something, or that you're a bat brain because you bought Bitcoin, or you're absolutely stupid, you're going to lose everything. If people are saying this stuff to you, that and trying to I guess finger point at you and say you don't know what you're doing, you need to immediately think to yourself, before that thought has a chance to nestle itself into your brain, you need to think, that's not for me. Okay. You can acknowledge the person, you can acknowledge what they're saying, and honor their opinion for what it means. But ultimately, when it comes to you, that's where the barrier needs to be. You need to say, this is not for me. Okay. Because so often it's those little things that it's just like a seed, like a weed in a garden, right? You can't see anything initially, but the seed's there. And all of a sudden it pops up and it's above the ground. And all of a sudden it becomes this flourishing weed. And what we need to be so careful is that we do not let that seed into the soil of our mind, technically. Okay, so we need to have these strict barriers about, you know, what is our standard, like what are our boundaries. Be very, very firm on what your boundaries are. And sometimes, as hard as what it is, sometimes you have to, when you're in difficult situations and somebody is what's the word, like going against what you're saying and trying to discourage you no end, sometimes you have to get up and walk away. That's what it ultimately comes to protect your own mind, okay, and to protect your own conviction. Sometimes the best thing you can do is get up and walk away. I've done it plenty of times. It takes a lot of courage to do it, but ultimately that's the best thing that we can do. Okay. And the thing to remember too is that when we're investing, specifically cryptocurrency, but overall, but when we're investing, you need to consider what we're doing as a marathon and not a sprint. And what I often like to think about when we're in cryptocurrency markets, right, and we're watching the markets do a run up, and then all of a sudden I'll have like a 30% pullback as an example, and then all of a sudden another run up, and then another pullback, and we're watching this, and every pullback is when you feel your heart sinking. You're like, oh no, I should have taken profits and I didn't, and it pulls back. But then, you know, a few weeks later, a few months later, we see another run up, and then, you know, hits another top and then has another pullback, and again you go through the same thing. But ultimately what you've got to remember is that the market is a marathon and not a sprint. So let's consider a marathon runner, for example, somebody who's in a marathon. When you're in a marathon, you just can't keep running and running and running without a break, without catching your breath. Okay, it simply doesn't work. I'm talking about long marathons, you know, like hundreds of kilometers long. You simply just can't keep running and running and running without stopping, without catching your breath. And that's the way I like to consider it. You can't expect the markets to keep running and running up without catching their breath. Okay. And so the pullbacks that we see is simply the market catching its breath. Okay. It's breathing out, it's pulling back, it's getting ready to run up again. And that's how we need to see it. We need to have the mental fortitude to see every pullback as simply the market is breathing out. The market is catching its breath. The market is just doing its thing. So then it can go up again and reach the next new all-time high. Okay. And ultimately what we also need to remember is that we don't want to invest more than we can afford to lose. And I know that that's incredibly hard sometimes to get your head around. I can't afford to lose anything. That's the first thought that we have. You know, if I invest $1,000 in the market, I can't afford to lose $1,000. That may be the thoughts that run through your mind. But I encourage you to emotionally detach yourself from that investment. Okay, consider that as spent money, whether that be whether you consider it as spent money as in, you know, like a material thing, but consider it as spent. You know, don't consider that money yours until you can pull the profits back out. And this is what I say: don't invest more than what you can afford to lose. So, say for example, if you can't afford to buy, you know, a nice pair of shoes, do you go out and buy them? Like, this is the same mindset that we have. If you can't afford to lose it, then don't go investing it. We need to be very, very firm on our own boundaries. Okay, we need to have very strict rules in place so then we can build the emotional resilience that we need. Okay, so remember, only invest what you can afford to lose. All right. And the other thing to remember too is that markets always have downturns, but they are not failures. Markets always have downturns, but they are not failures. And this is exactly it. If we had have panicked when our portfolio was doing a 60% pullback, like we only had 40% of the value that we had invested, was actually less than 40, left sitting in that portfolio. But if we had panicked, we would have lost 60%. But ultimately, it's not a failure. It's just a pullback. And it's not a loss because it's simply just a pullback, okay? So it's never a failure unless you panic and you panic sell and you actually physically lose that investment, okay? So it's really, really important that we have the emotional resilience to handle the market as it comes through. And I really encourage you to as I've been saying, peel back them layers and really start to dig deep within yourself. Remember, the best investors aren't necessarily always the smartest, but they are quite often the calmest. Okay, they don't react, and this is what I have learned, that so often we need to be calm when there's futility. You know, when there's euphoria, even when it's pumping, we still need to be calm. We still need to exercise the emotions so we can have the emotional resilience. Okay, it's extremely vital that that you remember that no matter the situation, that you are in control of your emotions. All right. So guys, I hope this has helped today. I would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to follow us on a podcast, to leave a comment, to leave a rating, leave a review, whatever floats your boat. I would love to hear from you. And ultimately, we do have our Everyday Profits Investing Basics course, and in that particular course, we teach on how you invest into cryptocurrency, and we also teach on mindset and emotional resilience. Is something I'm very, very passionate about. So I teach a lot of that in there. If this interests you, I will leave a link below. But please subscribe to us. I'd love for you to follow us, and I'd love for you to drop any comments and any feedback below. All right, folks, I shall leave it there. I hope you have a beautiful day and keep living the dream. See you later.